At our 10th anniversary gala, beneath gold chandeliers and polite applause, my wife raised a glass and said, to my husband, who may not have a job title, but at least he's good at opening wine. Laughter. Mine was the quietest. My name's Michael Reed. I'm 45. For the past decade, I've been married to Diane Reed. If you read business magazines or real estate blogs, you know the name. She's a star on the West Coast circuit. Keynote speaker, $1 Million Closer, poster woman for Self-Made. Except, she wasn't. Not entirely. See, every overnight success has someone working in the dark. I was that someone. The man behind the curtain. I designed every brochure. Built her pitch decks. Handled her branding. Managed vendors. I was the silent co-founder of an empire, with no credit, no paycheck, and no name on the door. At first, I didn't mind. I believed in her. In us. When she needed capital, I leveraged my retirement. When she needed someone to drive 6 hours to smooth over a failing deal, I packed a bag. I was her stability. Her compass. Her fire extinguisher. But slowly, the tone shifted. Diane stopped introducing me as her partner. I became Mike, or worse, the husband. She said I didn't need to be in meetings. Said I was too soft-spoken to handle negotiations. When I suggested new branding ideas, she'd roll her eyes and say, "Why don't you stick to designing menus for our dinner parties?" I ignored it. Told myself it didn't matter. Until the night of the gala. 10 years married. We hosted it at the Art Museum. Black tie, violin quartet, wine named after our old addresses. I spent weeks helping the planner. Diane spent weeks perfecting her speech. It was meant to be our night. Instead, it became hers, and mine was just the punchline. To Michael, she said on stage, holding up her glass. He may not run a business, but he sure runs a mean dishwasher. Laughter. I stood there, my face frozen in a polite smile while the crowd laughed like I was in on the joke. I wasn't. That moment split something open in me. Later that night, while she soaked in the praise and champagne, I stood by the hotel window, watching city lights flicker. And in that silence, I decided, no more. No confrontation. No yelling. Just truth. So, I started gathering everything. Emails. Invoices. Designs. Contracts I drafted. Wire transfers from my personal accounts into our business. All the things she took credit for. I didn't say a word. I wasn't planning revenge. I was building a case. And when the moment came, I'd make sure the truth spoke louder than her microphone ever could. People like Diane don't notice absence, not right away. Not when they're used to attention orbiting them like moons around a planet. So, when I started slipping into the background a little more than usual, she didn't ask questions. She was too busy talking to her reflection, and the mirror always agreed with her. I spent my days digging through years of buried credit, emails where I rewrote her proposals, voice memos she'd sent me asking how to explain profit margins to clients, even handwritten notes saying, "Fix this before tomorrow, don't make me look dumb." You'd think a decade of this would have turned me bitter. But I wasn't angry. Not exactly. I was focused. Every piece of data I found was another drop in the quiet reservoir I was building. My lawyer, Eli Barnes, college friend turned litigation sniper, called it a pattern of contribution without compensation. He said judges eat that up in court. "You sure you want to go public with this?" he asked one afternoon over black coffee in his office. "You still love her?" I didn't answer right away. Love was the wrong word now. What I felt wasn't affection. It wasn't hate, either. It was the kind of calm you get after a wildfire burns everything down, and you realize you can finally breathe again. "I want my name back," I told him. "That's all." Eli nodded. Then we do this clean. No leaks, no headlines. We let her underestimate you right until the hammer drops. And that's exactly what we did. For 2 more months, I played my part. I packed her PR boxes. I helped choose the photos for her magazine spread. When a Forbes writer emailed her for input on our business origins, she asked me to ghostwrite her response. I did. And I signed it with her name. She never noticed. You might think that's sad. But to me, it was confirmation. She didn't see me. Not really. She hadn't for years. What she saw was a background character in her story. Only I wasn't background. I was foundation. That December, we were invited to a private industry mixer in San Francisco. Big names. New investors. The kind of people who could write 7-figure checks with a smile. Diane insisted I come, for appearance's sake. Said I made her look stable. Funny how I'd spent 10 years stabilizing her and still only mattered when she needed to project balance. So I put on the suit. Smiled. Shook hands. Laughed at jokes I'd heard 100 times. And watched her hold court like the queen she believed herself to be. Then came the moment. One of the potential backers, a tall man with slick hair and a disarming charm, leaned toward me at the bar and said, "You must be proud. Diane says you stepped back from business to focus on gardening. That true? Gardening. That's what she was telling people now." I sipped my drink. Let it burn a second longer in my throat. Then I smiled. Oh, I'm just the guy who gave her the seed money. Planted the brand. Pruned the mess. And watered every deal until it bloomed. He laughed like I was joking. But I wasn't. Back at the hotel that night, while she FaceTimed her assistant to debrief on optics, I stared at her from across the room. She hadn't noticed that I was already gone. Not physically. But emotionally. I'd packed weeks ago. There's a moment in every magician's act where the illusion begins to break, but only for those who know where to look. For Diane, the unraveling started with a binder. A simple, matte black binder, nothing flashy. But inside, the truth, page by page. Contracts with my signature, timelines that placed me at the center of every deal she ever closed. Design proofs dated and time-stamped. Venmo screenshots of me covering expenses when the company nearly collapsed in 2016, while she was in Bali, working on her mindset. That binder sat locked in Eli's office, labeled Michael Reed, Contribution and Control. And it was growing heavier by the week. At home, things shifted. Diane began to notice my silence. My absence from meetings. My failure to reply immediately to her texts. "You've been distant lately," she said one night as we ate dinner across from each other in a restaurant we used to love. "Is everything okay?" I nodded. "Everything's clearer than it's ever been." She smiled, relieved, not realizing I wasn't lying. That week, she was preparing for a panel in Miami. I offered to help her practice. I took notes. I gave feedback. I watched her bask in the praise I handed her. And I recorded every bit of it. She didn't know I'd begun documenting everything, voice memos, email drafts, even the names of interns she took credit for mentoring, who'd emailed me privately asking for help. I was building a mosaic of the truth. Diane Reed was not a self-made icon. She was a borrowed genius. And I was the lender. The final straw came 3 weeks later. We were at a company dinner. Clients, colleagues, media. Diane, radiant in emerald green, was in her usual form, loud, commanding, and polished to perfection. She tapped her wineglass and stood to toast. "I just want to thank everyone here who made this year possible," she said. "Especially my team. And of course, my dear husband, who reminds me not to take life too seriously." She turned to me with a glint in her eye. "He's the fun one. Not much for spreadsheets or pressure, but he keeps the houseplants alive. Laughter. Again. A little too loud. And that's when it hit me, she didn't just forget who I was. She needed to. Acknowledging my role would mean admitting she hadn't built her throne alone. And egos like hers, gilded, towering, fragile, don't survive that kind of honesty. I excused myself early. The next day, I met with Eli. "File it," I said. "All of it." He raised an eyebrow. "You sure you're ready for this?" I wasn't. Not really. But I'd learned something. You don't wait to feel ready to reclaim your name. You take it back when it's time. 3 days later, Diane was served. Right in the middle of a Zoom meeting with investors. Eli said the silence was priceless. She called me that night. 3 missed calls. Then a text. "What the hell is this, Michael?" I didn't answer. Not yet. Let her wonder. Let her sit in the silence for once. She showed up at my office the next morning like a storm dressed in cashmere. No warning. No call. Just Diane, heels sharp, eyes sharper, holding the divorce papers like they'd personally offended her. She shut the door behind her, didn't even wait to sit before she started. "You blindsided me," she hissed. "Is this a joke?" I looked up from my desk, calm as still water. "No. This is 10 years of receipts." She didn't expect that. Her mouth opened, closed again. The silence between us was a canyon. Finally, she barked, "You could have talked to me." I did. You just stopped listening. She scoffed. "You've had it easy, Michael. I built a company. I've carried pressure you've never touched. Do you know what it's like to be the face of a brand? The stress, the expectations." I stood then. Walked over to the shelf behind me and pulled down a folder, one of many Eli and I had prepared. I dropped it on the table. Inside, emails from vendors addressed to me, timelines, transfer records, 3 pitch decks I built from scratch, the same ones she presented as her own. She flipped through it, slower now. Her confidence dimmed, but pride kept her spine straight. "So what? You helped. That doesn't mean." "I built, Diane." My voice, low but firm, cut her off. "When the business had 2 clients and no cash flow, I mortgaged my name. When your assistant quit the night before a launch, I stepped in. I didn't help, I kept it alive." Silence again. "Then, you're doing this out of spite." "No," I said, stepping back. "I'm doing this because I'm done being erased." The court date was set. By the time we walked into that courtroom, Diane had assembled a team of high-priced attorneys, dressed the part, and even managed a few crocodile tears in her statement. "My husband," she said with a carefully rehearsed tremble, "has always been supportive. But this is unexpected and hurtful." I sat there in my gray suit. No theatrics. No tears. Just facts. And then I stood. For the first time, I spoke not as a background character, but as the man who had quietly carried the bones of an empire on his back. I told the court about the sleepless nights, the branding work, the meetings I brokered under her name, the loans, the overlooked invoices. I presented documents. Screenshots. Emails. Even a voice recording of Diane thanking me, "You saved me," again, from 6 years ago. Her lawyers tried to object. The judge overruled. It was like pulling a mask off in front of a crowd who always believed the illusion. By the end, Diane didn't speak. She just stared. Not angry. Not broken. Just exposed. The verdict? Equitable division of assets, including a buyout for half of the company. I walked out with my name legally tied to the brand I helped build, and a settlement large enough to start something of my own. But more importantly, I walked out with my dignity. That night, I didn't celebrate. No drink. No party. I just went home. Took off the suit. Sat on the porch with a cup of black coffee. For the first time in years, I felt light. Not victorious. Not vengeful. Just, free. 3 months after the court ruling, I rented a modest office above an old bookstore on Main Street. No skyline views. No frosted glass. Just brick walls, creaky floors, and a south-facing window that caught the afternoon light just right. On the door. Michael Reed Creative Strategies. My name. My name. For once, mine. I didn't want to copy what I'd built with Diane. That brand had always been more show than substance, champagne receptions and buzzwords. What I wanted now was something honest. Clean. Quietly powerful. Like the kind of man I'd become. Clients came slowly at first. A few startups, a non-profit, a real estate team that had quietly cut ties with Diane months prior. I didn't advertise. Didn't pitch. Word spread the way I like things to, naturally, and with weight. Meanwhile, Diane. She rebranded. The Reed Group became Reed and Lux. New colors. New website. Same ego. Only now, the sparkle looked a little more forced. Her interviews were shorter. Her tone clipped. The investors I used to prep her for. They stopped calling. I wasn't watching her out of spite. I just needed to know. Needed to see what a machine looks like without its gears. One day, I got an email from her old assistant, Lorna. Subject line. About time you put your name on a door. She wanted to meet. Said she had some materials she thought I'd want, old drafts, team notes, a few internal memos that Diane had forgotten to include in her disclosures. I agreed. We met at a small cafe near the courthouse, 2 blocks from where my marriage had officially ended. Lorna slid over a manila envelope. I should have said something sooner, she said. But I didn't want to get caught in the crossfire. You were always the one holding that business together. Everyone knew. Did she? She had to, she said, sipping her tea. But it was easier to pretend she did it all alone. I took the envelope. Thanks, I said. Not sure I'll even use it. Don't, she replied. Just know you weren't crazy. That night, I stayed late at the office. No deadlines. No pressure. Just me, the soft hum of the city outside, and a desk that didn't carry anyone else's weight but mine. I opened the envelope. Inside were drafts of a business plan, handwritten, my handwriting. Ideas I'd forgotten I'd given her. Back then, they were blueprints. Now, they felt like artifacts. Proof that I had existed. Proof that I had mattered. One evening, I ran into Diane. It was bound to happen, we live in the same city, same circles. She was at an art event. Alone. Polished, as always, but something in her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. She spotted me, and for a second, her expression flickered, like she didn't know whether to smile or brace for impact. Michael, she said, crossing the room. You look well. I am. A pause. I've been meaning to reach out, she added, softly. Things have changed. I know. You built something impressive. I heard about the Thompson deal. Congrats. I nodded. Thanks. Silence again. Then, do you ever think we could have made it work, if we'd done it differently? I looked at her. For the first time in years, I didn't feel anger. Or sadness. Just distance. The version of us that could have made it work died a long time ago, I said. We just didn't bury it until recently. She looked away. Fair enough. We didn't hug. Didn't promise to stay in touch. Just stood there, two people who had once been everything, now nothing more than a chapter. As I walked away, I felt something lift. Not revenge. Closure. Success, when it finally came with my name on it, didn't arrive with applause. It came in whispers. Referrals passed from one founder to another. Quiet respect. A growing roster of clients who valued ideas over image. That was the difference now. I didn't need to shout anymore. People listened because I had something to say, not because I stood next to someone louder. By spring, Michael Reed Creative Strategies had outgrown the little office above the bookstore. I hired 2 employees, 1 designer, 1 operations lead. Both sharp, honest, and allergic to ego. We didn't do culture days or staged Instagram reels. Just real work, clean execution, and clients who paid on time. I wasn't rich. But for the first time, I was whole. One Friday evening, as we wrapped a campaign for a sustainable furniture startup, I looked around the office, sun dipping low, music low, team focused, and I felt it, peace. Not the kind you post online. The kind that lives in your chest. The kind no one can take from you. And then one day, I got a letter. Not an email. Not a LinkedIn message. An actual envelope. Heavy stock. Gold foil on the return address. Inside, an invitation. The State Real Estate and Development Association's annual gala. Diane's domain. I stared at it for a long time, then laughed, short, sharp. I hadn't set foot at one of those events since the night she toasted to me like I was a household pet. The irony wasn't lost on me. At the bottom of the card, in small italic font. Nominee, Strategic Partner of the Year, Michael Reed. Eli, my lawyer, called the same afternoon. You're going, right? I hesitated. Mike, this isn't about her anymore. This is your world now. Show up. He was right. The night of the gala, I kept it simple. Navy suit. No cufflinks. Just me, steady and clear. When I entered the ballroom, the air shifted. Not dramatically. Not loudly. But I saw the eyes. Heard the murmurs. Some whispered, "That's him." Some just nodded. Quiet respect. Diane was there, of course. Standing near the stage, wearing another designer dress. Her smile didn't flinch when she saw me, she was too good for that. But her eyes? They registered it. The difference. The fact that this time, I wasn't a +1. When they announced my name for the award, I didn't rush to the stage. I walked. Steady. Unapologetic. The applause was real. Short. Warm. Enough. I took the mic, paused. Then I said. For a long time, I believed that if you do good work, the world would notice. But sometimes, the world needs a little help. So this is for the ones working in the shadows. The ones who hold it all together behind the scenes. May you step into your light, on your own terms. Silence. Then clapping. Real this time. No spotlight jokes. No backhanded praise. Just a man reclaiming his voice. That night, I didn't linger. I shook hands, gave thanks, and walked out under the stars. No limo. No cameras. Just me. And for the first time in years, I wasn't walking away from something broken. I was walking towards something I built.